Are you living alone and terrified that a stroke could hit you when nobody's around to help? That fear you feel at night when you're by yourself, wondering if you'll wake up paralyzed or unable to call for help. That's not something you should ignore because every single minute counts when it comes to stroke, and what I'm about to share with you today could literally be the difference between life and death, especially if you're home alone, and I need you to pay very close attention because this 3-minute technique has already saved lives across America and it could save yours too. My name is Dr. Rebecca Parker, and I've worked as a physician for over 20 years, and today I focus specifically on senior health. And in all these years, I've seen too many seniors arrive at the emergency room too late after a stroke happened when they were alone at home, and nobody was there to notice the warning signs or call 911 fast enough. And that's exactly why I'm making this video today, because you need to know what to do right now if you're living alone. You're not alone in this fear, and I want you to know that because across America right now there are millions of seniors living by themselves. Maybe your children moved to another state for work. Maybe your spouse passed away. Maybe you simply value your independence and want to stay in your own home, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the reality is that strokes don't care if you're alone or surrounded by family, and they happen fast, so fast that you might not even realize. What's happening until it's too late? Let me tell you something that most doctors won't say out loud, but that I believe you need to hear. Living alone as a senior puts you at higher risk, not because you're more likely to have a stroke, but because when it happens, you're less likely to get help in time. And that's terrifying because we know that for every minute that passes during a stroke, your brain loses approximately 1.9 million neurons, which means that the difference between getting help in 3 minutes versus 30 minutes could be the difference between full recovery and permanent disability or even death. Now, before we go any further, I need you to do something for me right now. If this information is resonating with you, if you're sitting there thinking about your own situation living alone, or if you have a parent or grandparent who lives alone, hit that like button because it helps other seniors across America find this life-saving material, and I truly believe that this video needs to reach as many people as possible. So let's talk about why strokes are so dangerous, especially when you're alone, and I want you to understand the science behind this, because knowledge is power, and when you understand what's happening in your body, you're better equipped to protect yourself. A stroke happens when blood flow to part of your brain gets cut off and your brain cells start dying immediately because they're not getting the oxygen and nutrients they need from your blood, and here's the critical part. Unlike a heart attack where you might have chest pain that builds up gradually, a stroke can hit you with absolutely no warning. You could be sitting in your living room watching TV feeling perfectly fine, and suddenly one side of your face droops or your arm goes weak or you can't speak clearly anymore. According to recent studies, approximately 795,000 Americans experience a stroke every year, and seniors over 65 account for the vast majority of these cases. And what's even more alarming is that stroke is the 5th leading cause of death in America and a leading cause of serious long-term disability, which means that even if you survive, you could be left unable to walk, unable to speak, unable to take care of yourself, and that's exactly what we're trying to prevent here today. Now I need to tell you about something that happened just last year in a retirement community here in America. A 72-year-old woman named Margaret was living alone in her apartment. Her daughter lived 3 states away and would call her every evening around 7 o'clock to check in, and one Tuesday afternoon Margaret was folding laundry when she suddenly felt dizzy and her right arm went numb. She tried to walk to the phone, but her leg wouldn't cooperate and she fell to the floor, and here's the devastating part. She lay there for almost 6 hours before her daughter called, couldn't reach her, and finally contacted the building manager to check on her. By the time the ambulance arrived, Margaret had suffered severe brain damage, and she spent the rest of her life in a nursing home, unable to speak or recognize her own daughter. That story breaks my heart every single time I think about it, because Margaret's stroke was treatable. If she had gotten help within the first 3 hours, she would have been eligible for clot-busting medication that could have completely reversed the damage. But she didn't know what to do when she was alone, and those precious minutes slipped away while she lay helpless on her floor waiting for someone to find her. Now I'm sharing this with you not to scare you, but to wake you up to the reality of the situation, because you cannot afford to be unprepared. And the good news, the really good news, is that there are specific things you can do right now today to protect yourself even if you live completely alone, and that's exactly what this 3-minute technique is all about. But before I explain the technique, I need you to understand the warning signs of stroke because recognizing these signs immediately is the first critical step. And in America, we use something called the FAST method, which stands for face, arms, speech, and time. And this is something every single senior living alone needs to memorize right now. Face means look for facial drooping. If one side of your face suddenly feels numb or droops when you try to smile, that's a warning sign. Arms means if you raise both arms and one arm drifts downward or feels weak, that's a warning sign. Speech means if your speech becomes slurred or you can't repeat a simple sentence correctly, that's a warning sign. And time means time to call 911 immediately because every second counts. But here's what most people don't know and what I really need you to understand. Sometimes stroke symptoms are subtle, especially in the beginning, and you might dismiss them as just feeling tired or having a weird moment. And that dismissal could cost you everything because even if the symptoms go away after a few minutes, that could be what we call a TIA or transient ischemic attack, which is essentially a mini stroke, and it's a major warning sign that a bigger stroke is coming. Research shows that someone who has a TIA has a much higher risk of having a major stroke within the next few days or weeks. So now let me teach you the 3-minute technique that every senior living alone needs to know, and I want you to practice this until it becomes automatic, because in an emergency situation your brain might not be working clearly, and you need these steps to be so. Ingrained in your muscle memory that you can do them even when you're confused or scared. Minute 1 is recognition and immediate action. The moment you notice any stroke symptom, any facial drooping, any arm weakness, any speech difficulty, any sudden severe headache, any vision problems, any dizziness or loss of balance, you need to immediately stop whatever you're doing, and this is critical. Do not wait to see if it gets better. Do not call your daughter first to ask her opinion. Do not decide to lie down and rest for a bit, because those decisions cost lives every single day across America. Instead, in that very first minute, you need to get yourself to a phone if you're not already near one. And I know that if you're experiencing stroke symptoms, moving might be difficult, but you need to try, even if you have to crawl, even if you have to drag yourself across the floor. Getting to that phone is your number 1 priority. Minute 2 is the emergency call. Once you have your phone, you need to dial 911 immediately, and here's exactly what you need to say. I think I'm having a stroke and I'm alone. Those 7 words are crucial because they tell the dispatcher 2 critical things. First, that this is a life-threatening emergency that needs an immediate response. And second, that there's nobody there to help you or provide information. And then you need to give them your exact address. And this is why I always recommend that seniors who live alone keep their address written on a card right next to every phone in their house and programmed into their cell phone favorites. Because during a stroke, you might not be able to remember your own address clearly. Stay on the phone with the dispatcher and follow their instructions. They might tell you to unlock your front door if you can safely do so, because that allows paramedics to get to you faster without having to break down the door. They might tell you to lie down in a recovery position on your side. They might ask you questions about your symptoms and your medical history, and I need you to answer as clearly as you can because every piece of information helps the medical team prepare to treat you properly. Minute 3 is critical preparation. While you're waiting for the ambulance, which typically arrives within 8 to 10 minutes in most American cities, there are specific things you need to do to maximize your chances of a good outcome. And the first thing is if you have a medical alert bracelet or a necklace, make sure it's visible on your body because it contains crucial information about your conditions and medications. If you don't have one of these devices, you need to get one immediately. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. The second thing is if you're able to move safely, try to position yourself near the front door or in a location where paramedics can easily find you when they enter. Many seniors have lived in their homes for decades and the layout seems obvious to them, but remember the paramedics have never been in your house before and every second they spend searching for you is a second of lost brain function. And the third thing is if you take any medications regularly, especially blood thinners like warfarin or aspirin or medications for diabetes or blood pressure, try to have those medication bottles visible or at least remember what you take because this information is critical for the emergency room doctors who will be treating you. Now let me tell you about another patient of mine, a 69-year-old man named Robert who lived alone in a small town in the Midwest, and Robert had watched one of my videos about stroke preparedness, and he decided to take it seriously. He put his address on cards next to every phone. He got a medical alert device. He even did a practice run where he timed himself calling 911 and getting to his front door. And his family thought he was being paranoid, but Robert understood that preparation saves lives. 3 months later, Robert was making breakfast when suddenly his left arm went weak and the spatula fell from his hand. He immediately recognized what was happening. He walked straight to his phone, using the wall for support. He dialed 911, he said. "I think I'm having a stroke and I'm alone," and gave his address. He unlocked his front door. He sat down in his living room right near the entrance with his medication bottles on the coffee table in front of him, and when the paramedics arrived 6 minutes later, they found him conscious, prepared, and able to communicate. They got him to the hospital within the critical 3-hour window. He received the clot-busting medication. And today, Robert has made a complete recovery with no lasting effects from his stroke. That's the power of preparation, and that's exactly why I'm teaching you this 3-minute technique, because the difference between Robert's story and Margaret's story was simply knowledge and preparation. They both had strokes while living alone, but Robert knew exactly what to do and Margaret didn't, and that made all the difference in the world. Now I know some of you watching this might be thinking, "Dr. Parker, I understand the technique, but what if I can't get to the phone? What if the stroke is so severe that I'm completely immobilized?" And that's a legitimate concern because severe strokes can cause total paralysis on one side of your body or even loss of consciousness. And that's exactly why the second part of this strategy is so important, and it's something that every senior living alone absolutely must have in place. Write in the comments right now, do you currently have a medical alert system in your home? And if you do, which one are you using? Because your experience could help other seniors make this life-saving decision. Medical alert systems have evolved dramatically over the past decade, and they're no longer those bulky, embarrassing devices that people use to make fun of in commercials. Modern medical alert systems are discreet, reliable, and specifically designed for situations exactly like stroke where you might not be able to reach a phone. These devices typically come as a pendant you wear around your neck or a bracelet on your wrist, and they have a button that you press to immediately connect with an emergency response center that's staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The really advanced systems now have automatic fall detection, which means if you collapse and can't press the button, the device detects the fall and automatically calls for help. And some even have GPS tracking, so if you're outside your home, maybe in your garden or taking a walk around your neighborhood, and you have a stroke, emergency services can locate you immediately. And I'm telling you right now that if you're a senior living alone and you don't have one of these systems you're taking in, unnecessary risk with your life. These devices are available from multiple companies across America. You can find them at pharmacies like CVS and Walgreens. You can order them online. Many are covered at least partially by Medicare or your private insurance. And the monthly cost typically ranges from about $25 to $50 depending on the features you choose. And I know some seniors resist getting these devices because they feel like it makes them look old or helpless. But I need you to shift your perspective on this because having a medical alert system doesn't mean you're helpless. It means you're smart. It means you're taking control of your safety. It means you're ensuring your independence by having a backup plan. Let me tell you about a woman named Dorothy, an 81-year-old retired teacher living alone in Florida, and Dorothy's daughter had been begging her for years to get a medical alert system, but Dorothy kept refusing, saying, "I'm fine. I don't need that. I'm not that old yet." But finally, after her daughter wouldn't stop bringing it up, Dorothy agreed just to keep the peace. She got a system with automatic fall detection, and she wore the pendant around her neck even though she thought it was silly. For months later, Dorothy was getting out of the shower when she had a massive stroke that caused her to collapse on the bathroom floor. She was completely unable to move her right side, and she couldn't speak. But that medical alert device detected her fall and automatically connected to the emergency response center. The operator could hear that Dorothy was in distress even though she couldn't speak and immediately dispatched an ambulance to her home. Paramedics arrived within 9 minutes and got Dorothy to the hospital where she received emergency treatment. And while Dorothy did have some lasting effects from the stroke, including weakness on her right side and speech difficulties, she survived and she was eventually able to return home with the help of physical therapy. Dorothy's daughter told me later with tears in her eyes that if her mother hadn't been wearing that device, she would have died alone on that bathroom floor, and nobody would have found her until it was far too late. And now Dorothy tells everyone she knows that medical alert systems save lives, and she wishes she had gotten 1 year earlier instead of resisting it. But medical alert systems are just one part of a comprehensive strategy for protecting yourself if you live alone, and there are other practical steps you need to take right now to maximize your safety. And these are things that most seniors don't think about until it's too late, so I want you to implement these starting today. First, establish a daily check-in system with someone you trust. This could be your adult child, a close friend, a neighbor, a member of your church community, anyone who cares about you and would notice if something was wrong. And the system is simple. You call or text this person at the same time every single day. Maybe it's every morning at 9 a.m. or every evening at 7 p.m. Whatever time works for both of you. And if they don't hear from you within 30 minutes of your usual time, they know something might be wrong, and they should either call you or, if you don't answer, have someone check on you immediately. This system is incredibly effective because it creates a safety net without requiring someone to be with you all the time. You maintain your independence and your privacy, but you also have the security of knowing that someone will notice and take action if you're in trouble. And I've seen this simple system save lives multiple times in my career because that daily check-in means that even if you have a stroke in the middle of the night, someone will know something's wrong within 12 to 24 hours, at most instead of days or weeks. Second, keep a list of your current medications, medical conditions, allergies, and emergency contacts on your refrigerator. And I specifically say refrigerator because paramedics and emergency responders are trained to check the refrigerator when they arrive at a senior's home because that's where medical information is typically kept. You can buy special magnetic pouches designed for this purpose at any pharmacy, or you can just use a plastic bag attached with a magnet, and this list should include the names and dosages of all your medications, any medical conditions you have like diabetes or high blood pressure, any allergies especially to medications, and the names and phone numbers of your doctors and your emergency contacts. This information is absolutely crucial because if you're having a stroke, you might not be able to communicate clearly, and the paramedics need to know what medications you're taking, especially blood thinners, because that affects what treatment they can give you. And they need to know your medical history because that affects their decisions about your care, and having all this information readily available in a standard location could literally save your life by allowing faster and more appropriate treatment. Third, make sure your house number is clearly visible from the street. And I know this sounds like such a simple thing, but you would be shocked at how many emergencies are delayed because ambulances can't quickly identify which house they're supposed to go to. Your house number should be large, at least 4 inches tall. It should be in contrasting colors so it stands out against your house. It should be illuminated at night either with its own lighting or with a nearby porch light, and it should be visible from both directions on your street. During those critical minutes when an ambulance is trying to find your home, every second counts, and if the paramedics have to slow down and peer at house numbers trying to figure out which one is yours, those lost seconds are seconds of brain damage that could have been prevented, and this is such an easy fix that costs maybe $20 and an hour of your time, but it could make a massive difference in an emergency situation. If you want access to exclusive content, including a complete downloadable checklist for seniors living alone with specific product recommendations for medical alert systems and step-by-step guides for setting up your emergency preparedness plan, become a channel member. There I share even deeper information that goes beyond what I can cover in regular videos, and it's specifically designed to help seniors like you live safer and more independent lives. Now let's talk about prevention because while it's critical to know what to do if a stroke happens, it's even better to reduce your risk of having a stroke in the first place. And the good news is that many stroke risk factors are within your control through lifestyle changes and proper medical management. High blood pressure is the single biggest risk factor for stroke, and it's something that affects millions of American seniors. Your blood pressure should be checked regularly at your doctor's office, or you can buy a home blood pressure monitor from any pharmacy like Walgreens or CVS for about $30 to $50. And if your blood pressure is consistently above 130/80, you need to work with your doctor to get it under control through medication and lifestyle changes. One of the most effective lifestyle changes for reducing blood pressure and stroke risk is reducing your sodium intake. And I know that American cuisine tends to be high in sodium, especially processed foods and restaurant meals. But you can make simple swaps that make a big difference. Instead of using regular table salt, try using herbs and spices for flavor. Instead of canned soups, which are notoriously high in sodium, make homemade soups with fresh ingredients. Instead of processed lunch meats, buy fresh roasted turkey or chicken from your local grocery store and read nutrition labels carefully because sodium hides in surprising places like bread and breakfast cereals. Another major risk factor is atrial fibrillation, which is an irregular heartbeat that's common in seniors. If you have AFib, your heart doesn't pump blood effectively, and that can cause blood clots to form in your heart, which can then travel to your brain and cause a stroke. In fact, people with AFib have 5 times the risk of stroke compared to people with normal heart rhythms. And the scary part is that many people have AFib without even knowing it because it doesn't always cause obvious symptoms. That's why regular checkups with your doctor are so important, because they can detect AFib with a simple EKG or even just by feeling your pulse. And if you do have AFib, there are effective treatments including blood-thinning medications that dramatically reduce your stroke risk. So please don't skip your annual physical even if you feel fine, because these preventive screenings could save your life. Diabetes is another significant stroke risk factor, and it's epidemic among American seniors. High blood sugar damages your blood vessels over time, including the blood vessels in your brain, which makes stroke more likely. And if you have diabetes, it's absolutely critical that you manage your blood sugar carefully through diet, exercise, and medication if prescribed by your doctor. Simple protocol for daily stroke prevention. Every morning when you wake up, I want you to follow this simple protocol that takes less than 5 minutes, but could add years to your life. First thing in the morning, before you even get out of bed, do a quick self-check. Wiggle your toes and fingers on both sides to make sure you have normal sensation and movement. Smile and feel both sides of your face moving equally. Say a simple sentence out loud like, "The sky is blue today," to make sure your speech is clear, and if anything feels off or different from normal, that's a warning sign that needs medical attention. Then once you're up, drink a full glass of water, because dehydration overnight can increase your risk of blood clots. And this is especially important for seniors, because as we age, our sense of thirst decreases, and many older adults are chronically dehydrated without realizing it. And that dehydration makes your blood thicker and more likely to clot, which increases stroke risk.